Hello everybody, I'm going to be recording this video from home on my non-traditional setup. So yes, the webcam is a little lower quality than what I'm used to, but I still wanted to get this video out for people who have been able to work ahead of pace so that they're ready for the next assignment on this topic. So we are going to be covering similar and congruent figures, which we've actually done before. We just haven't used these terms. So we're going to actually start with congruent. So two figures that are congruent are two figures that are the same shape and the same size. When we did transformations and we did rotations, reflections, translations, all of those were congruent figures because even if they turned, they were still the same shape and the same size. By contrast, similar figures are two shapes that are the same shape but different sizes. So recently we've been doing the action figure project. So your prototype action figure is similar to your actual body itself, but it is not the same. So similar would mean similar but not the same. So same angles, different sizes, where congruent means fully the same. So I'm going to turn off the webcam. And we'll do a little bit of examples on each of these types so that you are ready for the activities on these assignments. So when we're looking at shapes that are similar and congruent, we are looking for things that are completely the same shape and the same size. So these two images are the same shape and the same size, but one is turned a little bit compared to the other. That does not matter at all, and so they are still congruent shapes. So when we are calculating the math with congruent shapes, they should be exactly the same angles and the same side measures. By contrast, we are looking at two triangles here that have all of the same angles, so they are the same shape, but one triangle is different or bigger than the other. So these have different sizes, and my pen doesn't seem to want to work here. One of the shortcut ways to think about this is that you should have the same angles. So if all of the angles are the same and corresponding angles are all matching, you can tell if an object is similar or congruent by are the sides the same. So in this case, we have decided that polygon ABCD is congruent to polygon EFGH, which in this case, we should know then that angle A must be congruent, which is an equal sign with a little Superman cape over the top of it, to angle E. Also, that would mean that if we're looking at side BC, because it is this diagonal side here, that means it must be congruent to side FG. And you can tell by looking at the shape, or looking at the letters that describe the shape, because BC would be the middle two letters, and FG here would also be the middle two letters. So let's do a couple quick examples that you might see in your assignment on this. So if angle A is equal to 90 degrees, what is the measure of angle E? Well, just like we talked about before, because these shapes are congruent, that means that angle E must also be equal to 90 degrees because they have to have the same angles in this shape. Our next one is asking that if side AB, which is up here, is equal to 6 centimeters, what would side EF be, which is over here? Well, we know that AB must be congruent to EF because they are both the first two letters in our shape. So then that means that EF must be equal to 6 centimeters as well. So one of the nice things about working with congruent shapes is that the math is usually pretty straightforward. It has to be the same. So you're just figuring out which sides and angles are corresponding or matching to each other, and then you solve from there. Now you'll see a couple problems that will ask you, are these triangles similar? Well, shapes that are similar must have the same angles as each other because they have to create the same shape, but they may create different sizes. Well, we don't actually care about the sides here because we're only given the angle measures. So because these are triangles, they have to equal to 180. So our first triangle would be 85 plus 64 plus x is equal to 180. And our second triangle would be 26 plus 85 plus y would equal 180. So for our first shape, 85 plus 64, this is the dangerous thing where I have to do the mental math in my head as I am doing it. I believe it would be 149 plus x is equal to 180, which means once we subtract 149 from both sides, we would get x is equal to 31 degrees. Now, down at the bottom in blue, if we did 26 plus 85, we would get 111 plus y equals 180. And if we subtracted 111 from both sides, we would get y is equal to 69 degrees. So if this is equal to 69 degrees, and this is equal to 31 degrees, they have different angle measures. Therefore, these are not similar. Let's look at one more. Same idea for the first one. If we do 81 plus 48, that would be 129 plus x equals 180, which means our x would be equal to, if we subtracted 129 from both sides, I believe it would be 51, or 51, as my friend 50 Cent would say. And the one on the right, if we did 51 plus 48, that would give us 99 plus y equals 180. And in this case, if we did that, we would get 81 degrees equals y. So in this case, the answer would be yes, they are similar because they all have the same corresponding angles. Let's do the most common real-world problem when we're working with similar figures. So we have decided that your shadow is going to have a similar ratio to your height because of the angle of the sun would be the same for you and the flagpole. So in this case, all we have to do is set a ratio. If we did height over shadow for you, it would have to be the same ratio of height over shadow for the flagpole. Because if we've decided that these are similar triangles, which we have decided that because of the angle of the sun being the same, then we know that it has to be the same ratio. So your height would be 5 feet. Your shadow would be 3 feet at this time of day. That should be equivalent to the x height of the flagpole because we're not able to measure it, but we are able to measure the shadow that is 36. So from here, we can do one of the most important skills in middle school. We can cross multiply to solve our proportion. So 36 times 5 is something I cannot do in my head, but it is equal to 180. Is that right? 30. Yes, 180 equals 3x. I could divide both sides by 3 so that x is equal to 60. So the flagpole is 60 feet tall, which would make sense because our height is slightly bigger than our shadow length. And if this was 60 feet, that is slightly bigger than 36. So, as we talked about similar and congruent figures, remember that congruent figures are exactly the same. Same angles, same sides, same shape. Similar figures are shapes that have the same shape but different sizes, and their side lengths must be proportional to each other. However, if you have any questions, definitely let me know and we can work on them together.